guys, Jerry from Showtime Audio. So we have this gorgeous murdered out 2023 Escalade. It's got the AKG 36 speaker stereo system in it. This client actually came to us all the way from Mississippi. 8.5-hour ride just to do an audio upgrade. They saw one of our videos on YouTube on an Escalade where we build this custom enclosure which still retains most of your trunk space, and they loved it so much they're willing to make the ride. I mean, we have some of the most amazing clients. I am always so grateful and so awed by the fact that somebody would do that. Obviously, they're also taking advantage and enjoying the city, right? There's a first visit to Chicago, so they're taking in the sights while we work on their vehicle. Now, what we're gonna be doing is we're gonna be building an enclosure. It's a downfiring enclosure with two JL Audio TW3 subs and a JL Audio HD 1201 amplifier. It's gonna be hidden and downfiring. The nice thing about it is it still gives you the majority of your trunk space. So if you're doing groceries, strollers, anything that you need to throw back there, you can still throw it back there without worrying about damaging the subs. So this is the enclosure. So just wanted to show you, talk about thin, right? To give you an idea, the woofer mounting depth is 3¼ inches. We went with 3½ just to give ourselves a little bit of space behind the driver. But that still means that this whole enclosure is only 5 inches tall. I mean, so that, as far as the sub box goes, that is pretty small or thin for a 10-inch sub. But we wanted to show you some of the construction. We put in these window braces. We call it a window brace because it kind of looks like windows, and it's braced all the way around, as well as where we have a long flat spot, we have another brace here and here. So basically we're trying to make the whole enclosure as rigid as possible. So even though it's thin, anytime you have a long span, you want to have a brace because that long span has the ability to flex. But if you put a brace in there, it can't flex. The thing we want to talk about is, I mean, look at that. I mean, it's just nuts, right? So the other thing is the way we do our carpeting or vinyl or whatever, we put in these seam lines, right? So this seam line runs like this, down, all the way down, over and back around. So in essence, the box is wrapped like a baseball. So think of it as this and this, right? So now we're actually wrapping the box in 2 pieces as opposed to 1 piece and then 2 end caps, or 1 piece and seaming it all together. This way it's super clean, super neat, and when it's installed in the vehicle, like, you know, it's end to end, so you won't be able to see any seam lines. So literally it'll look like it's a 1-piece pod, like 1-piece enclosure. We're gonna be adding a badge for the client, so that's what this recess is for. It allows us to customize and put a badge in here. We also have to add the feet, woofers, grill, our normal PowerWorks connectors, but just wanted to show you a little bit of what's involved in doing an enclosure like this. So a lot of times we get asked, why the down fire, right? Why fire down? Typically in an enclosure, you're firing up or back, right? It's very rare to fire down. But the reason we like to fire down is for a couple reasons. One is the functionality aspect of it. By firing down and using a thin sub, we're able to take up the least amount of space possible and still give the client room to still have function of the vehicle, mainly SUVs. If you have a 3rd row, typically you only have this much space. If I put an enclosure that's this tall, unless your groceries are gonna be by the window or over the top of the seat, that's kind of useless, right? So this allows you, we're only taking up, let's say, you know, a few inches off the ground, maybe, you know, 6-7 inches. And then that still gives you a ton of space to put groceries, strollers, whatever, right? The other main thing is by firing down, we load the woofers. So loading the woofers is basically allows the bass to transfer better in the vehicle. In a lot of home theaters, you'll see that they fire the woofers at the floor or they fire them in the corner because they're loading off of the room. So that loading off the room gives you a feeling of more bass. And also it gives the woofers a little bit more control because they're firing against something. So they have basically some like resistance, but that's the other main reason. But it sounds amazing. I mean, you can ask, who you can ask? it sounds amazing. We do it all the time, and clients are always blown away by the amount of output, and they can't see anything. I mean, literally you open the trunk and you're like, where's the enclosure? Like, where's the box? Because they're so used to seeing a traditional giant box, especially for the amount of output that we're getting. But as long as the box is built correctly, you're using good equipment, and it's wired right, it's going to work. I mean, in this situation, we're only doing 2 10s, but in the past, we've done 3 10s, even 4 10s. We have a Range Rover enclosure that we did 4 12s in this configuration, firing down, also a Bronco. Took up very little space, and the amount of output is just ridiculous. One of the things that we love to do is to incorporate elements of the vehicle into the enclosure or into anything that we're doing. They have this cool pattern on the window with this satin look against the shiny. So it's just kind of a cool touch. It's subtle, it's not black on black, tone on tone. And so we wanted to carry that into the enclosure. So we made this piece here, which basically is the same pattern in satin, and then they're shiny and shiny just like the truck and the window. So this is satin on satin black on shiny black. So we did satin black on shiny black, and this will live in the center of the enclosure. So when you open the gate, it'll actually look like it's 1 made for an Escalade, but 2 made for this Escalade, right? So it's personalized not only to the vehicle, but to the client. So this way it literally looks as if it was purpose built for the car. All right. So even though this enclosure is very, very thin, I mean, it's got some weight to it once you put the drivers in it, everything. And now we have our feet that we like to use. They're a 2-inch raise, so they raise the box 2 inches so that the woofers are not sitting on the floor. They're really close, but they're not on the floor itself. And we have 6 of them, 3 across the top, 3 across the bottom. And then we have our PowerWorks connector, which we really like. We're not a huge fan of terminal cups. In the past, I've had them melt. Obviously, they're not the greatest things in the world, and then you have to blow a giant hole in your brand new box. So rather than do that, we like to put these little pigtails on there with these PowerWorks connectors. But the nice thing about that is it makes it super easy for the client to remove it if they ever have to. If they need that extra space, if they need to get the car serviced, unplug it, and then when you go to plug it back in, it's keyed, so it can only go back in one way, plus it's color coded, so it makes it really difficult to get it wrong. Here we go. So this is the enclosure. So there's 2 TW3 10-inch woofers, and the enclosure goes all the way from end to end. And one of the things we want to talk about is the details, right? So a lot of times I sweat the small stuff, and it drives my guys crazy. But one of the big things is we always want to make it look as if it came with the vehicle. And so we take a lot of time to make that happen. So like, just to give you an idea, so this line right here follows this line. So, and I can tell you that this is 13 degrees. I can tell you because the first one I made was 15 degrees and it was bugging me. So I remade it at 13 degrees. Now people would say, why the hell does that matter? It's 2 degrees, right? Who is gonna notice, right? Your eye can pick up the slightest change in something. And, you know, obviously I'm pickier than most because cars is what I love and what I do, cars and audio. So, but a person who's not as into it may not be able to figure out why it doesn't look right, but they will still have this feeling of it doesn't look right. It doesn't go with the car. It doesn't look like it came with it. It looks aftermarket, right? And what you're picking up is those little subtle differences in shapes, right? So a lot of times when you see us do like radar laser, when you see us do audio, we follow body lines of the car. So lines that already exist in the vehicle. So then it looks as if it could have been part of the car itself. Obviously in this one, we also added the badge and we added the client's personal touch. So now not only does it match the car, but it matches the client's style. So those little things are what make the difference. So, all right, so another one of the things that we like to do a lot is put the amp in a more difficult location. So it's a lot harder for us because we have to make brackets, we have to find a home for it. But the nice thing about that is when the seat's back or when the car's in the normal operating position, you're not giving up any space. And same thing, it also makes it so that it looks more as if it came with the car, right? Because with the seat back, you open the trunk, you don't see anything, right? You're like, where's the amp? Where's this? Where, you know, so this way it's nice, it's hidden, it's clean. Again, way more work, way more detail, way more thought, but the outcome is much better. All right, so now, is it close? Absolutely, but it does not hit. And again, you're not taking any usable space, right? So yes, it's taking up some space in the vehicle, but it's nothing that's like crazy usable. All right, so another one, right? So again, bass knob. Typical is it's just mounted under the dash. It's difficult to reach. But again, another one of those details so that it looks like it came with the vehicle. Look at how gorgeous this interior is. I mean, the screens, the stitching, all the chrome work. I mean, it's just phenomenal. So imagine sticking this ugly knob there. So what we do is we take the shroud apart. Again, way more work, way more detail, much more difficult to get done. And then we mount the knob as if it was a knob that came on the column itself. But now super easy to get to, looks as if it came with the car, and just really functional. And so lastly is the circuit breaker. What we did is we used a stock bolt in order to mount the circuit breaker. The nice thing about this is, it's another one of those details that just makes it look as if it came with the car. It's all braided, it's heat shrunk, it's labeled so that you can't make a mistake figuring out where it goes. Is it a power, is it a ground? And also, like we always talk about for serviceability, now, no audio. Plug it back up, back in business. All these little insignificant things is what make it as if it came with the car, to make it look factory or OEM or like it could have came with the vehicle.